Great. Well, welcome everyone to our nonprofit panel discussion about the 2022 Impact 100 grant cycle. We're really glad that you all had an opportunity to join us today. And we are very grateful that we have our 4 grant recipients from 2021 who have agreed to be a part of this conversation. We hope that there's 2 ways that hopefully you can walk away learning more about all of this. One is from hearing about it really through the eyes of our grant recipients, and as they talk about their experiences and the things that were helpful for them going through the grant cycle. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll introduce our 4 grant recipients from 2021, and then we're going to go through and just have kind of like an open Q&A with the 2 of them. I'll go through some questions, commonly asked questions, and then we will absolutely have time after that to take any questions from you. We will be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions that come up through the conversation, just drop them in the chat and we'll make sure that we get to you. Joining me today is Sarah Grace Moore, who is our Impact 100 technology guru. We're really grateful to have her here. And Kathy Thornton, who is the vice president of the nonprofit cluster and on the executive board for Impact 100, in addition to me. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lisa DeGate, and I am the nonprofit coordinator, member of the board and nonprofit coordinator for Impact 100. So great, what I'm going to do is kind of get started and just give you a chance to get to know each of the executive directors who are here with us, and a board member. So why don't we start out with Carrie Kruer from Breakthrough. Carrie, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about you and a little bit about your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the board member on the panel today. Represent Breakthrough Cincinnati. And what Breakthrough does is we provide a kind of a rigorous 4-year college prep program for middle school students that are high need but high potential. Another big part of our mission, which very unique aspect, is that we have a near peer learning environment where college students that might be interested in going into teaching, particularly high need students, are teaching fellows. So we also seek to create a diverse pipeline of teachers that are also diverse.
Great, thanks. I'd like to introduce Ellen Muse-Lindemann, who is the executive director of Kennedy Heights Arts Center. So Ellen, if you could tell us a little bit about you and your organization.
Hi. Yes, thanks for inviting me to be here this morning. Kennedy Heights Arts Center is a community arts center serving a diverse population in the city of Cincinnati, offering a wide range of arts and cultural programs for people of all ages. Our grant from Impact 100 will support or is supporting the expansion of Youth Jazz Cincinnati, and a free after school jazz music education and performance program for students in grades 4 through 12 in Cincinnati Public Schools, offered in partnership with CPS. So we are just at the beginning of the expansion process for that, and I'm excited to tell you more.
It's great. Alexis Kidd is from Seven Hills Neighborhood Houses. She's the executive director there. Alexis, welcome.
Thank you. I almost forgot to unmute. Hi, I'm Alexis Kidd. I'm with Seven Hills Neighborhood Houses, which is located in the West End. So not in Seven Hills, but in the West End community of Cincinnati. And our organization is historically a social service agency. It's based in and rooted in the settlement model, like that one-stop shop before community centers were invented. Settlement houses did the work of those institutions. And so we do after-school programming, emergency assistance, and now we've entered into, and also we do victims of crime, but now we have entered into the CDC realm. And so we also do development in the neighborhood as well. And so our grant is basically focused on our Victims of Crime Services, the Trauma Recovery Center that was formed in 2016, where we began really focusing on the underserved individuals that suffer from trauma. And so that program, although we're based in West End, that program is citywide.
Great, thanks, Alexis. And our last panelist today is Kristen Burgoyne from Refugee Connect, Executive Director.
Good morning, everyone. Refugee Connect is a nonprofit organization that started as a Junior League of Cincinnati project in 2013, and we became our own independent nonprofit in 2018. Our mission is to connect refugees with resources to rebuild their lives as United States citizens. We offer a variety of programs to support not only refugee families in the community, but to facilitate collaborative leadership with partner organizations through a refugee empowerment initiative. The grant that we received for Impact 100 is helping us to expand a community navigator program where we hire, train, and lead a group of community navigators who are members of the refugee community, and they work directly with families, connecting them to existing services, benefits, and resources, really with the goal of helping to support family integration into the larger community and to remove barriers to family success as they rebuild their lives here.
So Kristen, as you think about your funding request from Impact 100, how did you go about describing it in the letter of intent in a way that you described it fully, but was kind of, concise and clear cut for those of us who wouldn't have, had as much information about it as you did?
Yeah, I think, as we were thinking about the LOI and really how to tell the story of the Community Navigator program, we really tried very hard to take out the jargon that maybe we're all used to because we're in nonprofit, but to speak to a larger and wider audience of people. So making sure that when we described what it was that our community navigators do, that we used verbiage that maybe people outside of the nonprofit world could understand. And I think also backing up our program with models that we actually have used as evidence-based practice. So this program is not something that we just created out of thin air. We actually researched in other states models that are similar, and so that's kind of how this project was born, was really out of that evidence-based practice. So I think that was really important in telling our story as well.
That's great. That's great advice about using language that people outside of the nonprofit community could understand. That's awesome. Maybe I'll go to Ellen. Do you have other recommendations, Ellen, that you might suggest as other nonprofits are going to be submitting their LOIs in the next month?
Yeah, so I think along with demonstrating the evidence-based practice or any kind of evidence of early success that you've had with the project that shows your capacity to take it to the next level, that really, I think, can make a difference in your application. Also, clearly and persuasively sharing the community need is also important. So why is your particular project needed in the community, and how will it help fill that need? So that is, a lot to pack into the LOI, I know, but that is, I think, part of what helped our application, be persuasive.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks. Carrie, you know, one part of the process is financial questions. What kind of questions did you get from us in that process? And you know, can you give any thoughts to other applicants about how to think about those questions?
Sure. So our LOI was for an expansion site in North College Hill. So, you know, there were several follow-up questions to the LOI, and that's kind of where those came through. And the crux of it was, first and foremost, demonstrate that this is a sustainable program, that where's the money going to come from after our seed capital? And then just some questions that were particular to our financial statements regarding grants. And then also if we were to get other grants that we had simultaneously applied for, how would we handle that? And I think, you know, that's something that particularly if you are applying for multiple grants, that you have to think about in advance, because that's obviously a very legitimate question and you really need to contemplate how you would handle that.
That's good insight. Alexis, how about you? Any thoughts about how you approach the financial questions that were part of the grant process?
So ours is actually for the renovation of the future home of the Trauma Recovery Center. And I know we did have some questions in terms of there were other fundings that we had received, and this was kind of the finish line funding that we needed for this project. And so some of the questions that came about were, where does their money come in? And actually just being clear about what the dollars would be used for in terms of Impact 100. So these phase dollars would be used for X, Y, Z, and then being clear about and concise about how their money would come in, what it'll be used for more specifically. I think getting to the specifics as to how the money would be used. And even for us, one of our follow-ups was with the construction cost rising since the time we turned in, our original LOI was, are those numbers going to change? Can you go back and check those numbers to make sure that the project can still be finished with this grant? And so we were able to follow up and give the information that was necessary.
That's great. That's great. We're just now at the LOI stage of this process, letter of intent. But further down the line, there will be site visits, and I was wondering if you can each give the folks on the line just a sense of the site visit process. Who contacted you? What is it all about? And what kind of questions did Impact 100 membership have of you? Maybe Kristen, if we could start with you.
Yeah, I don't know if we have time to go back to the financial question, because I think
Oh,
there's
absolutely. Please do.
something
Yes, please.
important that people may want to consider. So our organization actually budgeted a deficit for 2021 because we went through a strategic planning process in late December of 2020 through April of 2021, and our board really aligned the future vision of the organization with our Community Navigator program. And so that's why we had a deficit, because we recognized that we needed to sustain this program and really build some strong diversified fundraising strategies around our community navigators. Do not let that dissuade you from applying, because we got a grant. As long as you can justify that budget deficit and build a strong case for how you are working to sustain your organizational operations through fundraising, I think that is very important to note. As far as the site visit is concerned, an Impact 100 committee member reached out to us to let us know that we had moved into the site visit, and everything was virtual this year. I don't know if that's the intent moving forward. So we had to think creatively about how we were going to present this project in a virtual realm and to the Impact 100 members that were participating in that site visit. My recommendation is to include as many organizational people as possible in that site visit, not like overwhelming. We had, I think, 4 people. We included a couple board members. We actually had 2 of our community navigators come and speak about the work that they're doing and why it's important for their communities and how an expansion of the project could really provide better outcomes to more families. We also had a board member who is a former refugee speak about her experience and why she chose to be on the board of Refugee Connect. So I think just thinking strategically about who's coming to your site visit, how do they contribute to the story of your project? And so that was really important. Also, if you have somebody who is well-versed in your finances, whether that's your board treasurer or a finance manager, make sure that they're a part of that conversation, because they will inevitably ask you more questions about your finances. So you want to be prepared.
Yeah, that's great. Now, Carrie, I think you participated in the site visit through the, from a perspective of a board member. What was your experience?
Well, first of all, I will just say you are a very organized organization. So that really made it very easy. We had a unique situation because our executive director had moved on to another opportunity, and I kind of swung in and led the process. So I came in just completely cold, and it was still very easy. So it was wonderful. Specific to the site visit, going back to previous comments, bringing a team in that can speak to different elements was very important. From our side, I had a board member that was very involved in the strategic plan, really had gotten in the weeds in engaging with North College Hill, so he could speak to that. I had Eugene Blaylock, who is the superintendent of North College Hill Schools, so he could talk very, very specifically about what this would mean for his kids and his community. I had one of the program directors that runs one of our sites at Cincinnati Country Day, and she was able to really bring the program to life so that the folks could just understand what it's like for a student to go through this process. And that's what we tried to do. And what I found was that the panel was super engaged. Not only did they ask questions, the follow-up questions that we received and asked to be prepared to address, but along the way, just really asked a lot of great probative type questions. It was a great experience.
Oh, that's great. Ellen or Lexus, do you have anything else you want to add?
I would say because ours was a brick and mortar development, and we ended up submitting a video to kind of do a walkthrough of the building and try to give the vision of what will be in those places. So that's the only thing I can say that is different from what was already shared. Definitely a tremendous team of women who really care about investing in organizations like ours. And so it was really definitely an easy process. They're very gentle with us because this is our first time actually applying for it. So I really didn't know what to expect, and they made the process very easy for us.
That's great. Thanks.
I'll just say at this point that, so the whole process, as others have mentioned, very good questions, really great organization and leading you through, but it's definitely an investment of time, not only from your, who your executive director or whomever usually writes your grants, but from your whole team. And so I would say 2 things about that is, 1, be prepared to invest the time, and that the payoff is worth it. because there was so much that we learned through the experience that was valuable. In our case, it was taking what had been sort of a pilot project, a new program we had developed just for 1 year, and how we took it to scale. But I would also say that I, like probably many people on the call, had applied to Impact One. We had applied to Impact 100 in the past, and had years. And what this particular opportunity is looking for is transformational change. So really looking, and so finding. So there were many years where I said, there's many ways I could spend $100,000, and I would love to spend $100,000 on our programming, but I kind of waited until we had a project that really, truly, this investment would have this transformational change on the individuals we serve, and and create something new, meeting a need in our community. So I guess that's the thing I say, is to be prepared to invest time and intent in this process, and to be thoughtful about what opportunities you see with your organization and in your communities that really would align to creating transformational change, and then that might be a good project to bring forward.
Yeah. Thanks, Ellen, for that. You're talking about investment of time and what you did get from the investment in time. And I think that was really important to bring up and to speak to. And that, and the comments you made about transformational change too. It's really, really helpful. So maybe, at the very, very end of this process is the annual award ceremony, and there's the preparation for the annual award ceremony. I was just wondering, if any of you have any comments about the annual award ceremony and how that experience was for you.
I thought it was fun, actually. There was just such great energy in the room. Again, you guys are really organized. So walked in feeling like we were well taken care of. We knew exactly what our roles, responsibilities, what the flow was going to be. One thing for me is I really enjoyed learning more about the other finalists. It was very, very energizing. And, at that point, you want everyone to win. It was a very, very positive experience.
So I'm just going to add the waiting for the call part was that was a good day. Our staff, we believe in prayer. We were all praying, like, don't forget to pray. This call, this positive call today. And so when we received the call that we were selected, we were head over heels. We were floating on cloud 9. So when we arrived at the ceremony, it continued to keep that high going. Like you said, high energy, meeting all the other recipients of the grant, just being in that space, in that room was just really exciting and fun, and feeling validated for the work that we had put in, not only just for the programming that we're doing and the vision that we have for our organization, but also in that moment of the work that we put in, the time that was invested. Like Ellen mentioned, that investment is huge. And so that payoff it was a highlight of all the work that we had invested in that.
I also felt like we were kind of joining a community. Loved learning more about Impact 100, not only through the process, but definitely at that event, the spirit of Impact 100 really came through. And it was just a great night of community.
That's great. Thanks for sharing those comments. That's, this goes beyond the actual event and kind of how your experience with it and how you felt and how others in your organization felt, which is great. So kind of stepping back, we have a whole process here for Impact 100, and our members are actively involved at all those stages of the process. If you think back, what were you ready for? If you think back at the beginning, what were you ready for, and what were you maybe surprised at or not ready for? And were there things that you really enjoyed about the process and some things that were kind of surprising to you about it?
I think for Refugee Connect, we were very thoughtful about the project and applying in the first place. So I think that kind of goes back to what Ellen had talked about earlier, is what we're proposing transformational. And I think there was a lot of thought that went into it before we even completed the LOI. So coming to, this call, we did this as well. We came through this to learn more from past recipients, which was really helpful. I don't feel like we had any surprises because Impact 100 did a really great job at communicating throughout the entire process. And while it was, at times nerve-wracking because we're trying to get all of our ducks in a row and make sure that we're, we were ready for the site visit, or putting all that practice into the actual pitch video. We felt very supported by Impact 100 throughout the entire process. So I don't feel like for us there were any real surprises. And I think, that speaks to how organized Impact 100 is. And I guess if I had to give advice, it would just be to make sure you're really prepared and that you are able to speak about your project and that you're, up to date on all of your financials so that you can answer those questions that might randomly pop up at the site visit.
Well, and how about you? What, you've mentioned a few things already, but anything else, that you think would be helpful?
Well, I would definitely echo Kristen's comments that we felt very supported by Impact 100 throughout the process. So each step of the way, and like creating our pitch video, that was a whole new experience, and being coached through that. And we had some folks who are playing a role in the program actually, speak on the video, not myself. And so, but we actually, they supplied us with a personal communications coach. She was absolutely amazing, who helped us tell our story, helped us shape our story, and helped us practice telling it. And then, had it recorded and all that kind of thing. So we felt very supported through the process. And, I think that, again, if you're, really being, spending that time up front in terms of really defining what change, you are proposing to make, and really having a clear understanding of your project going into the process will help tremendously. And I have to say, the other kind of bonus about being a part of this whole project was meeting. I mean, of course, we were a lot of the times online, so didn't have as much direct connection, but had an opportunity to meet quite a number of Impact 100 members. And then people, reached out to me outside of that. And so it was really great to connect with, other philanthropists and folks who are active in the community. And then certainly when we were awarded it, I can't tell you how much response we received from our community. People were congratulated. It just really helped raise the profile of our organization. We're still a rather small organization that doesn't have a huge visibility. So that was a bonus for the project as well, is just being considered and being a finalist really raised the profile of our organization in the community.
Alexis, so I was wondering if you had anything else to add, from your experience, anything, things, perspectives that you have, or any advice that you would give.
So, skipping not the last question. I was ready for that one.
Well, you can answer any question you want.
No. Then I'll move forward. So I think what everyone else said, so true. The preparation needs to be there. the project that makes the most sense, where you're really contributing to, especially now, today, where we're at in the world, there's so many issues. And so making sure that whatever program, whatever project you're pitching, just making sure that it's getting to the heart of where we're at, not just as a city, but as a country. Like trauma is a hot topic. And so we've been doing it before trauma became a hot topic. But to really pick an area, pick that portion of your program and your services that really is getting to the heart of where people are crying out in need of. I think that's key. And then having those passionate people that are providing those services, that are receiving those services, that can really help articulate your story and share that story, I think are key.
That's great. Carrie, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I think Alexis said it very well, but yeah, being able to demonstrate how what you're doing fulfills a current need. And for us at Breakthrough, education, and particularly in light of COVID, is something that everyone is thinking about. And, we've been kind of addressing the summer learning loss, and I guess there's COVID learning loss. So being able to demonstrate, hey, we have a track record, and in today's environment, and relating it to today's environment, I think was very helpful in our process.
That's great. Maybe the last question I would ask, because I want to make sure that we leave plenty of time for those of us, the folks who joined our call today to ask you questions. What do you think was the most challenging part of the Impact 100 process? And what do you think was the most rewarding? Obviously, other than receiving a grant. And I'd like, yeah, go ahead.
I'll go first on that.
Absolutely.
And perhaps it's because our situation was somewhat unique with our executive director having just left, but I think the commonality with other folks on the panel is we're small but mighty organizations, right? So I think one of the biggest challenges for us was, sometimes just coordinating the team members for different, for the site visit, for the video and the video training. A lot of this happens in the summer months, which kind of adds an additional layer. So I think herding cats, but that was internal to us. Everything that you guys did was very organized and clearly articulated. So yeah, that was our biggest challenge, I think.
Okay, thanks. Kristen, how about you?
I think our biggest challenge was, I guess there were kind of two. So at the site visit, because our community navigators that participated were not used to public speaking and they were very nervous, we asked them to volunteer. So it was not like we told them they had to do it, but I spent a lot of time coaching them on their stories and helping them to kind of craft what it is that they wanted to say, and actually practicing with them so that they felt confident speaking to the group. And I think that paid off. So I think that goes back to the time investment, making sure that you are investing time in the process. I think the second challenge was the actual video pitch. And it was not something we were used to doing. I am not great at public speaking, and I will say your executive director may not be the best person to tell your story. And I was not in that video pitch. It was our program director and our board member who is a former refugee. We, I think, spent a lot of time working on that speech and really figuring out the best way to pitch this project in 5 minutes, because that's what you're given. And so I think that, again, it goes back to that time investment and kind of being strategic about who is telling your story. I think the most rewarding part for us was the validation that what we're doing is meaningful and transformational. And it was just great to be given the opportunity for a lot of women in Impact 100 to see the value in our program, because we are also 2 full-time staff. That is it for our organization. So to know that we have the backing now of Impact 100 and that they really value the work that we're doing, I think helped not only our full-time staff feel like, yeah, we put, all the work that we put into making this project a reality is finally creating awareness about our organization, but it helped our community navigators see that even if they think that their work is not that meaningful, that it really is. And we celebrated with them, and we continue to celebrate with them.
That's awesome. Ellen.
Well, I just agree with so much of what Kristen just said, so I'm not sure how much I have to add. I had also was going to say that just telling our story in a persuasive way, particularly through the video, was definitely both, I think, the biggest challenge for us and also the most rewarding. We also had, I did not tell our story. I thought it was better. Our music director and then one of our instructors, who is a former CPS student who went through, jazz programs like this in the past. And so that was, that whole process of folks that are not necessarily used to public speaking, but really have the authenticity. I thought that was what's most important, is I think the community and, the Impact 100 members and the community really appreciates hearing those stories from individuals who are directly impacted and directly involved. It just, it's authentic, it's, more persuasive, you feel more of the impact when it's coming from folks that are directly involved in the program. But then of course it takes more prep time, sometimes it depends, but it was definitely paid off for us, obviously, in this circumstance, but I think just in general, was a great experience for all of us involved to, be able to tell that story. And I think it really helped us zero in on, what it is we want to communicate about jazz and youth jazz Cincinnati, and how particularly the art of jazz has an impact on young student minds and in their futures. And so it just helped us, be able to zero in on what's important and then say it in 5 minutes or less.
Thanks, Ellen. Alexis, is there anything else you would like to add?
So I think ours is the same, similar in terms of challenge. One, who to speak, and then for us, I was kind of torn. I read some of the reviews on like some recommendations on whether or not to allow a client to speak, and it's one thing for us to have someone speak about, thank you for getting us clothes and coats for Christmas, but a whole nother thing to have a victim of a crime to actually speak and tell their story. And so fortunately we had a courageous one that actually wanted to, and she'd been so appreciative of the support that she had received from us that she asked. So I was like, okay. And then also making sure we continue to still cover her and that she felt comfortable with what level she chose to expose of her story. And I think that was the largest challenge or the greatest challenge that I had during the process, was allowing her to speak. And then I think the triumph was, that in the room, the applause, the support that she felt rallied behind. I think that was a beautiful moment. Absolutely agree with the ED might not be the one to speak, and sometimes they are. There are times where I do speak, but I felt like our coordinator of the program, who is truly passionate about what she does, what she lives, moves, and breathes in, and then also the client, I think, were key members to speak. But sometimes it is the executive director, but I definitely think choosing wisely who tells your story is key.
That's great. Well, thanks, Alexis, Carrie, Kristen, and Ellen, for the conversation that we just had. I think it was really important for those who are applying for the 22 grant cycle to hear from people who went through the process. I would like to open it up now for questions. I don't think we have anything in the chat, do we, Sarah Grace? So, feel free if you have a question to please go ahead and ask away.
Yeah, feel free to unmute and ask or write it in the chat.
Hi, everyone. I do have a question about startups. So I've read that you do entertain applications from startups. I just wondered if there's anything different or any different advice you have. Thank you.
So I guess, Carrie or Ellen or Kristen or Alexis, would you have any different advice? Nick's question around, being a startup, being a relatively new organization.
So I think I'm looking at it from the perspective if I received LOI from a startup. And I think the first thing I would be interested in, other than mission fit and need in the community, is just sustainability of the program. I think that's always going to be, no matter where you're applying to, that's always the first question, or at least in the top 5.
I think one of the things we talked about was also best practices. Where are you getting your examples as to this program? Is it fitting somewhere else? Is there some national model that you're pattern after? I think I was find someone or some other program that's doing what you're trying to do, attempting to bring and showing that successful model.
Great, thank you.
I'll ask a question for the non-panelists. So we have a whole bunch of folks who represent nonprofits here on this call. And I'd be curious of the nonprofits who are not the awardees from this past year, has anyone participated in the process and maybe not received an award? And what were your learnings from that? Anybody that participated in the past?
Hi, this is Mary Schluter. I'm just sitting here. So we had a site visit, and regarding our sports analytics programming with FC Cincinnati, we were doing a pretty amazing program on sports analytics and developing a program within Cincinnati Public Schools and from the Ohio Department of Education. And so we did have several of our students talk, and it was a very crowded classroom. We had probably 20 Impact 100 individuals there. And so my advice, my 2 key learnings is vet the students who talk and make sure there's, I don't say a script for them to say, have them sound authentic, but have them know what it is I'd like for them to talk about. And then 2, do something to make sure that the individuals who come and sit in the chairs know something about the project. Because we noticed that we gave an overview of the project when we had the FC Cincinnati marketing director talk and the YMCA partner talk, that a lot of the women were hurriedly going through some of the overview that we had given earlier in the Impact 100, LOI or whatever it was. And so that was my biggest issue, is perhaps I should have, and of course, the Impact 100 person who had originally taken us through everything, and she couldn't be there that morning. And so that was my biggest disappointment, is that I didn't think that people were listening as much to the people who were talking about the impact they were going to have, the authentic people talking about this, because individuals weren't as prepared to know really what the program was. And it was about data analytics and developing sort of like a Moneyball program within the school district. It was a pretty amazing program. MIT was one of our partners, and I just think maybe we could have given a better overview of what is data analytics, when you look at a chart. So that's my biggest issue. One, we should have expected that potentially people really didn't have a better understanding of what the program was, that they hadn't looked at their homework ahead of time, which isn't a bad thing. I'm going to move because it's very loud. I'm sorry. And I've got a cat following me. I'm sorry, you guys. Anyway, that's really my biggest issue is I just, and I don't know if you guys can tell, I was pretty disappointed that we didn't get it because we had students lined up, we had partners. It's an amazing program, but we just didn't seem to communicate, you know, the value of it and the impact. And so my two learnings are make sure those people who come actually know what the project is ahead of time. So anything you can do to make sure that they're not trying to get up to speed, and to make sure that your individuals who are speaking specifically from a student level really know some of the key points that they should be indicating while still preserving their authenticity in involvement in the program. If that makes sense. Sorry. So
yeah, thank you, Mary. Thank you very much for those comments. We really appreciate it. Yep. Thanks, Janet, for asking. Do we have any other nonprofits who have a question that they'd like to ask? Because this is for you. And if you don't, it's okay, because I want to make sure that you all know that because we had scheduled 3 sessions to do training on LOI, but at any time, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. And in fact, I'll drop my email address in the chat because I want to make sure that you feel like if you go home today and you have a question, that you could reach out to me. And if I don't have the answer, I'll make sure that I can get it. But even more importantly, I hope that Carrie, Alexis, and Ellen and Kristen wouldn't mind me saying this, but I'm sure that the 4 of you would be very happy to take questions from anyone about the process too. So
Lisa, there are 2 questions in the chat.
Yeah, I was gonna say there are 2 questions. First, Kathy has a question: in what ways, if any, can the work you put into the process be useful to any other work? Which I think is a great question. And the other question is a pitch video required this year, Lisa?
Okay.
So I think it could be extremely helpful. And for us, I mean, it really gets you to think about what's most important. And then in future applications, so when we're applying for other dollars, I mean, I already have a great blueprint I can use in the future for that. I also think in terms of the process, like you can apply again. I'm hoping now that we apply again in the future, not anytime soon, like not next year or anything like that. But also with going through the process, understanding the expectations. So if we apply again, we'll have that. But I think it definitely it'll make it easier, a gentler process to go after other funding from other sources, because this one is a very thorough process. And they make you really think about what is most important, highlighting and getting drilled down to what's key for your program project.
Yeah, and I think to go along with what Alexis stated, it really helped us kind of refine our story so that when we do apply for future funding, we're very clear about what it is that our program does. We have, very clear outcomes. We have very clear measurements for how we look at success of the program. And so I think going through the Impact 100 process really helped us to refine our story for our Community Navigator program. And we're not only is our staff better at telling that story, but our board is better at telling that story.
That's great. I don't know if anyone else had any other thoughts to add to that question, ways that you can put the work of the process to work for you in other ways. I do want to make sure that I answer the question about the pitch video. Is a pitch video going to be required this year? The answer is we don't know yet. What we have done pre-COVID as an organization is we actually had live presentations happen. We went to a video for COVID reasons. We're now thinking about, just like other organizations are, how do we think about the ways in which we've changed how we work during COVID? Think about what is helpful and we should carry on going forward, and the things that we should really go back to and kind of change up, because those were really only helpful during a time when COVID existed. So to be honest with you, probably before we went to videos, I'm going to say this, most members might have said, we don't really want to do videos. That's going to be, whatever. Surprisingly, I think and I'm going to turn it, I'm going to ask our panelists to comment. I could say from a member's perspective, we've gotten some positive feedback about having videos. Maybe more important, what our members think. Be really curious to the four of you. What's your opinion about a live pitch versus a video pitch going forward? What would you recommend to Impact 100 that we do for the benefit of the nonprofits who are participating in our process?
Just did a live pitch for, I'm sorry, Alexis.
Go ahead, Kristen.
You're unmuted. I just did a live pitch for another grant and it was so nerve-wracking. I much preferred, not that I was in the video, but I think it was less nerve-wracking for the people who were giving the speech to be able to have it videoed, because it really kind of took away, I think, the nerves that you might experience standing in front of, you were still in front of a group of people, but you were able to review your video. And I think that was really helpful for us, because we would say, we like this part of it, but not this part, because they let us pitch, or you had 2 tries. So I really appreciated the video. I think, that was definitely better than doing a live pitch.
I was gonna say, I agree that I like the video part for the chance to have a second chance. I think one point, one of our people might have frozen them or got a little choked up. So I like the idea of being able to do the video, and then those that can't be in the room still have an opportunity to hear your story. Because I think that the hearing your story is where the votes really come in at helping further your cause. And so I like the video.
Yeah, I would concur, and removing that nerve-wracking element of it then opens it up a little bit more to who you can think about making the pitch, which is very helpful. And also to expand on Alexis' comment, you were very gracious to let us have access to that video. So we were able to use it for, just not necessarily publicly, but someone else that it was appropriate for them to see that video, to hear the pitch. That was extremely helpful.
Ellen, what are your thoughts?
Well, that was actually what Carrie's last point I was going to mention, is that also the benefit of making a video, in addition to having a more supported process where you don't have quite as much stage fright and as much pressure as a live performance, is also having access to that video to share. Otherwise, even with my board and with other supporters of the Youth Jazz Cincinnati program, it was helpful to share. And then also, my understanding from the past is if an Impact 100 member was not able to attend the awards ceremony in the past, they just voted based on a written description.
True.
And submitted their vote that way. So that's another huge benefit of having the videos, is individuals who maybe wouldn't have been able to attend the actual ceremony were still able to hear your pitch and be able to vote, based on your story. So, and it really wasn't, we were talking about how that was the biggest challenge of the process, but it really wasn't harder to do the video than it would be to do the live presentation. So I would vote to keep it as part of the process if you all are deciding, and then maybe if you're able to have the award ceremony in person, to show the videos at the ceremony.
Wow, great. That's a great suggestion. Thank you to the person who asked the question, because I think that you really helped us a lot. And it really gave, frankly, me the opportunity to ask to ask our finalists, or our grant recipients all at once, what their opinions were on this. So we're definitely gonna take that, definitely gonna think long and hard about that. It's terrific. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like we do have one. Go ahead.
Yeah, Lisa, in the chat, Jared said, Ellen mentioned the importance of talking about how the funding would be transformational for the applicant. Should applicants be framing the LOI from this perspective of how the funding is transformational for the organization and less about how it is transformational for the people served?
I would say that that's going to be most important is how it's transformational for the people served, and even for the how transformational will be for the community at large, because we don't know what other transformational impacts can happen by just those people who are served. I mean, you change the lives of 100 people or 50 people, and we can't even begin to predict where that will happen in the community. So please, we would want you to focus on transformational to the community and the people that you serve. And if you think there's a part of the story that makes sense in terms of how it's going to allow you to take a next step, and tell that story, but tell it from the standpoint of you being able to do even more transformational work with it. But I would suggest that you make that as the second part of the story. I don't know, what do the panelists think?
Well, I echo that 100%, and I'm sorry if I was misunderstood previously, but when I was talking about transformational change, absolutely 100% looking at transformation, within our community and our community's needs, and that's what would be important to focus on.
And I think for us, we really focused not just, I don't really think we even really focused on the individual transformation of the people we support. We looked at it more from like, if we were to get this funding, what does that mean for, what Lisa went back to, for the entire community? Because now they have access to this support that will enable entire communities to thrive, not just individuals who are receiving the support. Because if we're able to create change with just one family, they're going to take that information back to their communities, and they're really the gatekeepers for their communities. And so we looked at it more from a systems level and community level change.
Awesome. Great. This has been a great discussion, and I don't want to cut it off early, but I also want to be respectful of your time. We do have about 3 more minutes. So is there anything else that you might have right now? Anything on your mind right now?
I thought I saw a few hands raised, but they went away. So I don't know if we answered the question or not.
I think, Lisa, my last advice would be not to be intimidated by the process. You are the expert. You know your organization, you know your project. It might seem time consuming and daunting to go through this process, but if you're really well organized and you really believe in what you're doing, that's going to show. And so I think, don't be intimidated.
Well, Kristen, I couldn't even imagine having any last words of advice that would be better than that. Thank you so much. And before we sign off, I want to thank all of our panelists, Carrie Kruer, Alexis Kidd, Kristen Burgoyne, and Ellen Muse-Lindemann from joining us today. And thank all of you for joining us too. And again, I dropped my email in the chat. If you have any other questions that come up, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And also, please know that if you want to contact any of our panelists directly, I think they've all nodded their heads that they'd be happy to chat with you. So thank you very much, and have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.